If you've ever watched someone with a virtual reality goggle on and you see them falling or you see them like trying to traverse a beam or walk on a bridge and somebody pushes them and they start to fall, even though they're in their living room, they in their mind are thinking that their life is at stake and they're falling towards the ground. And the only way to pull them out of it is to literally change their view. Welcome to Living God's Light, a podcast to help you strengthen your spirituality and your connection with God. We are so happy to have you as a part of the Living God's Light family.
We were thinking about doing a follow-up to our last video, but as I was looking at the comments, it's relatively few that were kind of angsty.
Yeah.
Most of them were like, this is awesome. This is exactly what I needed. So not that we need to ignore the angsty ones, but as I was thinking about it, a lot of them were like, you guys are just ignoring what's going on. Like, no.
That's not what said at all.
I mean, so much so that I helped start a whole political party last year. I mean, is that ignoring what's going on?
Yeah.
No. So,
Right.
but the difference is that you can be like in a hurricane, tornado, whatever. If you're in the eye of the storm, it's calm. You can see everything going on around you, and it's crazy. But there's a huge difference between being in the eye of the storm and being right where the winds are buffeting. You can barely even see what's going on. And then also historical perspective. People were losing their minds that 2020 was the end of the world. But as a student of history, people that study history are pretty much in agreement that 1968 was much worse than 2020. It checked all the boxes of 2020, but it was worse. And if you go back even further, I mean, you had, the Great Plague, the Black Death. You've had, genocide is nothing new. I mean, how many civilizations have been totally wiped out by greater civilizations as they're expanding their power? Humanity is just a mess. It just is. It's just but you don't have to live in angst. You can be in the eye of the storm through all of that.
Well, and it's really perspective, right? Because if I'm looking at like where I stand, where I recognize, like you're talking about history, that I have no knowledge of history, right? And so my perspective is pretty limited. I mean, 30 years on this planet, that's nothing, or 50 years or 60 years. That's really not a long time in the span of history. And right, you're talking 1968. I had no idea. So yeah.
Well, and the other thing I was thinking is in response to some of the folks that are very strong in their opinions, I learned a lot from Benjamin Franklin. So I recommend, Vinny recommended Man's
Search for Meaning. Yeah.
Man's Search for Meaning. Should know that. I just finished that book again. But the autobiography of Ben Franklin, I learned so much from that. So how would you like to know how to make your conversations more pleasant, have people more open to your opinions, be less embarrassed when you're wrong, and make it easier to get people to join you when you're right?
I like that idea.
Yeah.
So I learned all of that from one simple thing from Benjamin Franklin, and it's worked awesome.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it like an easy nugget you could share?
Please opine. Please opine.
Yeah, so I actually wrote a little bit of a paper on it, and I'll just go straight to the translation. Feel free to jump in if you've got any thoughts on this. So he puts it, this is back in 1700 speak, so my translations are, first of all, if you state your opinions as an incontrovertible fact, you are asking to start an argument, and people who disagree will stop paying attention early.
True. Very true.
So what he did early on, he learned kind of this debate style that he would apply in arguments. And as he put it, I really like his words. So he would obtain victories that neither himself nor his cause always deserved, because he got really good at argument. And he recognized just because he was really good at it doesn't mean that he was right. So he came across another book, that Socrates and Socratic methods of things, that he would stop coming in with a really dogmatic manner and go, "This is the way that it is," and he'd instead say, uh, "In this circumstance, it seems to me," or "In my experience, it seems to be this." And so he would kind of dial back the certainty, even if he was pretty certain, but he would come into it more softly. And what he found was those four things. Um, so other things that he explains, that if you want to be smarter on a topic, and you should, but you talk like you already know it all and you're confrontational about it, people who know better will simply leave you in your own ignorance
Yeah.
because you're not worth the time to try to educate. As he puts it, they will probably leave you undisturbed in the possession of your error.
Yeah,
And
that's good.
and I mean, so many times people are like, "This is the way it is," and I'm like, "Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go
Yeah.
talk to somebody who wants to have a conversation." And then lastly, he says, "You're really not going to please anyone with this approach, and you're definitely not going to sway anyone to your side." And what I wrote, in truth, the only people who will be endeared to your fiery words are the fellow members of your choir, and their attraction will be more likely driven by inflamed passions than deep affection. In short, they'll support your fire as long as it's pointed in their chosen direction, but that same fire will be turned to burn you just as quickly if you dare to step out of line with their dogma.
Wow. So what you're saying is nothing's changed.
No. And it's amazing.
It's all the same. It's
Humans
just
are
many
humans.
years later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the people, they were lamenting about how humanity is, scourge of the planet. No, the planet is here for us to learn. And yes, there are people that are doing horrible things, but there are also people that are doing wonderful things, loving things every day. And like Vinny has taught, you get more of what you focus on. Wherever you look, you'll find what you're seeking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know for me, and the big thing is if someone really is heated and they're disagreeing with me, I will join their team for 5 minutes and I will point out everything that I agree with them. And that lets them know that I'm not just trying to be some opposition to them. I want them to know that I empathize with their points, their principles, their values, their talking points even. But at the same right, I embrace what I know to be true too. And sometimes that deviates from what other people's opinions are. Most times it does actually. But that's okay. That's part of this amazing journey that we all get to have our own flavor. That's why you go to the ice cream shop and there's lots of flavors. That's how it's supposed to be.
So when you do that, how different is the interaction when you come at it with well, in my experience, versus, nope, you're wrong, this is the way that it is? So what's the difference between those two? Because I know you've tried both.
Oh, I have tried both. I have tried, you are wrong.
And how does that work?
It didn't work. It didn't work. I actually, in high school and some college in my communication class, we would do debating. And I remember debating pro and against, no matter where you personally stood. And it was really a good test for me because sometimes in the middle of the debate, I'd switch my side and I'd realize, wow, I guess I was taking this the wrong direction. This actually makes sense. I need to be on this side of things. I love that. I love that, all of us get to find our truth. We get to find our truth according to our perception, according to what we perceive reality to be. And yes, those truths will change. Just ask anybody who used to be single and now they have kids. Many truths change once you have kids. Now all of a sudden you're not just living for you. You're kind of reading down the map, looking down the road and saying, hey, how's it going to be for my kids? And you're wanting to do a lot better, So yeah, it's one of those things. I love that it's part of this life that we get to try both, that we get to do both, and lovingly we can embrace any different point of view without shutting it down, and just give grace.
Yeah.
Give the grace that we wish others would give us. Give that out first, and watch. Eventually, it starts coming from others. Yeah.
I love that.
So, Alyssa, what are your thoughts? What's been your experience?
Well, my experience, I would, if I am honest, I try to stand in the neutral ground. And if I take a step back, and where that comes from me avoiding conflict. So, and I can point back to like my childhood as to reasons why that I would want to avoid the conflict. Now I can stand kind of and look at both and go, I can see the point in that, and I can also hear your point on that. So I try to be objective, but especially with the issues that have come up of late, I try to stay very neutral. And that for me it just keeps my world at peace, because I'm not focused outward. I'm really like, I've got little kids, right? Like I just, honestly, if I am so focused out there, and I'm pointing to my window because that's like a representative of like out in the world. If I am so focused out there, I am missing the mark for my kids, and I don't want to do that. So, I mean, so there's a comfort that comes in staying neutral for me. And I'm even felt myself shift to a side, and now I'm having to like pull myself back to my neutral center. So I don't know if that's helpful at all to anybody, but that's my experience.
I think it is. So there's a very good point here, and that is that, to everything there is a season, and there's different stages of life. If at your stage of life, you are raising kids, taking care of your family, and you're helping us with the Living God's Light stuff as well. You're part of that team. Our plates are only so big. Don't feel like you've got to do all things everywhere. So that's wise that you are aware of your own limitations. For my part, I'm not in that stage. And I am, to be clear, as much as we talk about, the focus of the podcast here is kind of that higher level view of things, but I'm also not neutral, very involved, and not getting into details because that's for a totally different venue.
Different channel.
As I mentioned earlier, I helped start a whole new political party last year. Not neutral, but still in the eye of the storm.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I observe is life is funny. If you've ever watched someone with a virtual reality goggle on, and you see them falling, or you see them like trying to traverse a beam or walk on a bridge, and somebody pushes them and they start to fall, even though they're in their living room, they in their mind are thinking that their life is at stake, and they're falling towards the ground. And the only way to pull them out of it is to literally change their view. And right now, we have an amazing opportunity. Take off your political goggles, go outside. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Whether it's cold or warm, it's beautiful. Enjoy what is, and remember that the only war that exists is the war within. And you get to choose how much of that's going on. That's an important thing. Sorry about that. That's an important thing for all of us to remember, that sometimes I'm the guy with the goggles on, and I'm like, oh no, Lynn's like, take off the goggles, Vinny. It's okay.
Yeah.
And I'm right there. A true empathetic person where when someone is in a struggle, I struggle with them. I do. And that's part of who I am. It's especially since my experience, it's who I am. And sometimes I do get so blinded by the struggle of others. It's hard to take off the goggles, go outside, take a few deep breaths, and see that life is really darn good when you're
Yeah.
looking around.
Yeah. So how do we get ourselves, because I'm sitting here thinking about people that are in pain, specifically a group that I work with, and I want to pull them out. I want them to see how incredible they are, right? And I really find that that's a lot of the root of, specifically with the group that I work with. They don't understand their true worth, their true nature. And when you don't understand your true worth, you don't treat yourself as if you're the most worthy person to be loved, right? When we don't understand that, we're not going to treat ourselves as such. So how do we pull ourselves out of that and gain that worth so that we might want to change our world so that our world is what we are worth? Does that make sense?
It does. To a crazy guy, that makes
That
total
makes total
sense.
sense to you, right?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I understand that. I'm right on base with that. And I'll tell you, like, one of the best ways to invite them out of their paradigm of just Armageddon, because a lot of people are in that paradigm right now, to invite them out without actually causing Armageddon, because there's a strong chance of that, is love. Absolutely love. And putting an arm on them, putting an arm around them and saying, I love your passion. I love your enthusiasm. I love your dedication to your principles. But please take care of you for me because I care about you. And I don't want you to lose your life or downgrade your existence just because something didn't go the way that you wanted. There will be another day. I guarantee you that. I guarantee you there'll be another day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beauty of that darn pendulum. No matter which way it is now, it's always going to correct. It will always correct. So all we have to do is cheer when it's correcting towards our beliefs, and empathize and try to win others over to our side. Over to the side of what we believe is our truth. But I will say the more kindness that we can dish out, the more kindness we will be given, and when the roles are reversed. So it's important to use that kindness as that pendulum goes back and forth.
It's beautiful.
I think something that you said that was very important was, love. Because really, if you are doing anything from a place of love, and also be open to being wrong.
Yeah,
If you
absolutely.
have not changed your opinion on anything in the last 10 years, you're probably not open enough.
Take off your goggles.
Yeah, exactly. For my part, I'll just share an example of what that means to me. So I've got 4 kids. And a few years ago, one of my kids came to let me know that they were trans. And it's interesting because whatever your feelings or your beliefs, it's all theoretical until someone you love looks you in the eye and says, "This is me."
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, you've got a choice of how you're going to respond to that. And fortunately, my wife and I both, the response was love.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and when
And
you love your child, that's the only response there is.
yeah, it really is. And it applies to friends. I know so many people are like, "Oh, I lost a friend over this political ideology."
Yeah,
And it's, fortunately, I've still got friends on all sides, and that's partly because of the eye of the storm thing. But whatever it is, this was something that I really. So when my kid is telling me this, I've got to figure out how that fits into my worldview. This was kind of a new thing. I mean, I was aware of it, but it was always, it was removed from me. Now it's in my living room.
Yeah.
The decision. I mean, the kid, I love my kid, and we've got a wonderful, wonderful relationship, love and support for the whole family. But it required me to figure out how that fit into my construct of what the world was. And like we talked about last time, that, or actually what you were talking about earlier, Vinny, about being able to debate both sides. If When I was in college, I had a professor that I still don't know where he really stood on any issue, because he was so good at whatever a student put forward, he could argue the opposite point, and he was very persuasive. And I loved that. And that was a good example to me of really understanding where people are coming from. Like we talked about last time, when you truly understand someone, you love them and you have compassion for them. And then you can have those discussions like we talked about at the beginning, where you invite people to have a conversation and maybe persuade them to your view, or maybe you need to change your view, or
Yeah.
maybe meet somewhere in the middle.
And whoever said you couldn't love who you disagree with? I mean, what is with that? That's something new.
Oh, yeah.
I don't understand that. I grew up in a world that you can agree to disagree and still be friends. That's so weird.
Yeah.
And I truly believe it's the same as those diehard fans of football team such and such, or hockey team such and such, or basketball team such and such, and they get in fights with the other team in the stands. And it's hilarious to me that when you see these fights happening, it is a carbon copy of each other on the opposite team. And it's like fighting yourself.
Yeah.
It is. That's what it feels like when I watch that. I'm like, oh, look at that. Look at me fighting myself right there. Isn't that funny? And sad, Like, we don't have to lower ourselves to that, because there's never been any healing ever done through violence, ever, in all of history. That's not the route to go, especially when love is such a big part of who you are. So if we have to decide, if love is part of who we are, politically, ethically, whatever, it has to be actual love, not the fake kind where it's all sugar and donuts while we're all in the same room and all agreeing with each other. No, it needs to be across everything. It either is love or is not love.
Can I ask you, like, I'm sitting here thinking about how, before I found your story, Vinny, like, I was really sorting through my religious views and what I had grown up learning. And I had created over time this idea of what love was, how to get the love, how to show love. And I think it was muddled up in religious messages I received over time. How do we disconnect those? Especially when it's all we know, right? It's hard for me to explain, but I'm sitting here empathizing with people that all the messages they've received have about love, about the Creator, are wrapped up in a religious package.
A dogma. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do we separate from that? How do you redefine love if it's only been one way that you've ever known?
Well, that's the beautiful thing about life, is you're constantly redefining everything. Every day you exist here, you are. You're redefining what youth is every year you have a birthday, right?
That's true.
When I was 18, youth was someone who was 16. Now I look at those 30-year-olds and I'm looking at those youth. It's funny though. Everything is being redefined. Our paradigm is shifting every single day we exist here, and by design it is. That's why we're here. We're here to figure it out, to not be someone else's slave. either ideologically or thought wise. We can have our own thought processes, and that's one of the reasons, again, why I love that book, Man's Search for Meaning, is it gives you the freedom to choose what is your reality. And it doesn't have to be someone else's reality. You can choose what works for you for now, and then get down the way a little bit and adjust it again. And, it's like Lynn said too, when you have one set of principles wrapped up in truths, but yet there's a lot of falseness wrapped up around those truths. You think, do I just toss it all out? No way. Pick out the truths, toss away the falseness, and start rebuilding. And that is the human process. That's what we're here to do. It is. We get to go to a truth bar. That's what life is. Go around, you find your truths, you pull it out. Go find your truths, pull it out. Yeah.
Well, and I'm sitting here envisioning from the book, all the people sitting on the hill, trying to explain the image of a rainbow. If you haven't read this in the book, then you don't know what I'm talking about. But, 100 people sitting on a hill seeing a rainbow for the first time, and they're all describing it, right? Over time, I'm sure the practice of explaining what a rainbow is going to look like it's going to change, it's going to evolve, and it's going to just get better and better and better. I would imagine.
And think of this, the human eye only sees about 15% of the spectrum of color. Imagine what that rainbow looks like if you see 100% of the spectrum of color. That's so, then there's always that one witness of the rainbow that comes out. I am the most, accurate depiction of a rainbow. It's right here. Come and see it. It's the best. Everyone else is wrong. They're evil. They're bad. Everybody else is wrong. And here's what's neat about that. I love that guy just as much as I love everybody's description of the rainbow, because what they're doing is they're just trying to figure it out for themselves and do the best that they know how. And I love and honor all religions, all belief systems for that very reason. Give me 10 minutes in a room with two people that find themselves to be enemies, and I promise you, I can show that they are 90% the same person within those 10 minutes. 90% common with all other man on earth.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be any wars. But that's a future truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I listened to your question. I'm reminded, so we keep talking about the book, and I don't know how many people listening are aware that the book, The Light After Death, talks about Vinny's experience. My favorite chapter in there is the one about the power of creation. And that's really what we're talking about. That to your question about love and how do you evolve that sense of love, I would say have a clear picture in your mind of what you want your life to look like. What do you want your ideals to be? Do you want like we mentioned at the beginning, when you have conversations with people, do you want them to be pleasant, and you want people to open your opinions? And love is a good foundation for that, but also your techniques. I know you've been exploring art. How has your art evolved just in the short time you've been doing it? And how has your vision of what that looks like affected it? So you created in your mind what you wanted your art to be like, and then you do it. What's your experience been with that?
Well, I would say I had to let go of some beliefs that were even holding me back. I mean, I'm 34 years old and I am trying art for the first time. And not only that, I'm sharing it. And that is extremely, extremely vulnerable because I know I'm not great, Art is in the eye of the beholder, so whatever. But I've had to really let go of some beliefs and just create from a space of curiosity and playfulness and just try to have fun with it. And it's trying to redefine it by releasing the beliefs.
So did that shift happen on its own, or did you decide you were going to make that shift?
It did not happen on its own. I decided to make that shift. I also have a way of sitting in a very curious space and going, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
Why do I have this? Where did this come from?
Did you always have that curiosity, or did you decide to have that curiosity?
I would say in the past few years, I've decided to have that curiosity because I realize the power of healing that comes in being very, very curious without judgment.
So the point is, you are creating your experience because you decided you wanted something different. And that's what you're creating, is that experience in addition to your art.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
And we can all do that with whatever experience we're having.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alyssa, your team has a secret gift for you. Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
Next time you create something, ask yourself, if one of my children made this, would I want them to share it?
That's going to make me cry. Because I know that anything.
Notice how that energy
created,
shifted right there, right?
Yep.
That shifted so much from it's me creating to that's my child's creation. Like,
Yeah.
because you're a huge fan of your kids. That's just
Yeah.
that's the role of most good parents, right? That shifts the energy quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be like, yes, let's go. Let's go put it everywhere.
Josh is gonna come home. You're running around the house. Look what happened.
That's so cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a very cool shift. I hope other people felt that shift too, because
So that translates to everything anyone does. You know, whether you're a writer, Lynn, screenwriter, Lynn, or anything else that he's got his hands in, which is like 1,000 things, you know, or anything that you're creating. Imagine that your child just created said thing or thought up said idea and accept or reject from there. And a good parent will never reject what the kid comes up with, ever.
Yeah,
They
so
might modify it.
Yeah.
We're not jumping off the roof today, honey. You can jump off the chair.
But I'm sure the parachute's going to work.
Yeah, I know. I was one of those kids.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I think that's a nice little nugget for everybody that you know, the hard thing for us to understand is how we're treating the outside world is an indicator of how we're treating the inside world. And if we are freaking out, we are freaking out. Yeah. So it's an opportunity that we can try something different, even for a day. Just try something different for a day. Like put down the gauntlet of the VR headset that you were wearing. Put it down for just one day and see if the sun does shine. See if flowers do smell good. See if life does still seem sweet, even though the world is ending.
Yeah.
It's important for us to do that.
I love that. I think this is a wonderful place to put a pin in for next time. I feel like this was a great message. I just want to thank the community so strongly for receiving our message from last time, whether you loved it or hated it. We're grateful for all of it because we're learning and growing. And I just can't thank and send love to everybody who's watched and received the message. So thank you.
I'm going to say that too. Thanks everybody who listened in. Thanks for the 80 to 90% that only listen 3 minutes. Just kidding. Thanks for you special ones who held on to the very end. But I love you guys and know that tomorrow is a better day. And today can be the day you allow it to be, the day you create it to be. Thank you for joining us on the Living God's Light podcast. You can help keep the show going through getting merch at livinggodslight.com or contributing what you think the show is worth on our website or by going through Patreon. Thank you for sharing your light with the world. You are making a difference, and we love you.